Welcome back to Kitchen Inspired. I am Jen Morris, and I'm here with Chef Jeff Woolley, and we are so excited to bring you our second show, Cooking with Root Vegetables. Last show, we were cooking with garlic, and we had over 800 views. Lots of people were watching and listening in, and so we're excited to get going and bring you these amazing dishes that Jeff has created for us. So let's get going.
Okay, so sticking with the current season that we're in, we were able to find beets and spinach and butternut squash, all from local farms, Owens Farm being the primary source. So today we're gonna start the dish with the sauce, the beet puree. If you're trying to cook along at home, I believe I put in the notes that you needed to pre-roast your beets. All you have to do is take the whole beets, rub some oil on them, wrap them in foil. You'll bake them in a 400-degree oven. It takes about 45 to 60 minutes, and then you just let them cool down, take the skins off, and then they're ready to go. So we're gonna start. You're gonna want to take, I use 2 beets. It's 8 to 10 ounces of beets, but we're just gonna use 2 of them right into the blender. If you don't have a high-speed blender, you can cut the beets up a little bit ahead of time, but I know this blender will be all right. A little bit of parsley.
If you don't have a blender, can you use a food processor?
You can, but it won't be as smooth
Okay.
of a puree. But we got 2 tablespoons of sherry wine vinegar.
Ooh, that smells amazing.
We're going to do a tablespoon of honey.
And why honey as the sweetener?
It's just natural. It's already a liquid, so there won't be any grains like in regular sugar. You could use agave nectar or
Okay.
maple syrup if you wanted to. And we need a couple tablespoons of olive oil.
Great.
And then we're just going to put the lid on it and let it blend.
Perfect. So I'm wondering, need a little more liquid in there. How do you get it to blend? Beautiful color.
Yeah. 1968 is the answer.
Got it.
Now we're just going to set this aside until we need it for service.
So any safety tips on putting really hot food in the blender while you're blending it?
Well, you never want to fill the blender bowl. There's usually markings on how high you can go. And with a high-speed one like this will actually, if I leave it running, it will cook the beets, like it'll heat up enough to cook the beets. So, you know, it's got a tight-fitting lid, always have the lid on.
Got it. It's a gorgeous color.
Yes, it is. So we're going to start on the butternut fritters. So what you're going to need is 5 cups of grated butternut squash. You can use any box grater. If you have a food processor with a shredding attachment, that's what I use. And so that's why I've already got 5 cups of shredded butternut squash for you. So if you're working with us at home, you can go ahead and pause the video and shred up. It took 2 butternut squashes to get this volume of butternut squash shreds, and that's going to be our starting point.
We're sort of elevating the butternut squash from the Thanksgiving puree to fancy
Correct.
fritters. I
Here
like
we are.
that.
So we're going to add to that 2/3 of a cup of flour. We're going to add 2 eggs. I'm going to use an egg replacer because I'm vegan, and so we're just going to add in approximately 4 ounces of egg replacement. We're going to add in some pepper.
And what are the eggs for? Just to like stiffen up the batter?
It's a binder. It'll hold the fritters together into a pancake form. We're going to use a little salt. This is just Himalayan pink salt.
Oh, I recognize that salt.
Yeah, you do. And then we're going to need a teaspoon or 2 of fresh sage in here.
Ooh, that looks great.
Just going to give that a little chop.
And it smells divine. I wish you were here.
Now, when you're doing a leafy herb like that, I probably should have gone a little slower for you. All you do is stack the leaves together, roll them up real tight like a cigar, and just slice across them. If you leave it like that, it's called a chiffonade cut, but we need it chopped up more, so we're just going to run the knife through it a few more times.
What inspired these dishes this time, Jeff?
This again, it came down to the vegetables that I had to work with. I wanted to have something that was a little lighter. You could use it as an appetizer or just have a couple more and make it a meal. Yeah.
And all of the main ingredients were available on Local Foods Plymouth, which is great. So, you know, the ability to get beets and spinach, good healthy greens, and the squash all year round.
I checked for this week, and they're still available this week as well.
Great.
So we're just going to mix this together.
We're so lucky. Okay, so that's coming together nicely. It's kind of like a thick mixture.
Yeah, it looks
not watery.
very similar to potato pancakes. If you make those at home, it's very similar, just butternut squash instead of potato.
And do you have to drain the potatoes because they have more water content?
For potatoes, yes.
Okay.
The butternut
So
squash
if you
is pretty dry.
substitute, probably the same with zucchini or any other.
Yeah, and if
watery
the
vegetable.
mixture seemed too wet, you could add a little more flour to it, and that would help pull it right back together for you. All right, so now we need to turn our pan on. We're going to add a couple tablespoons of oil. This is a nonstick pan. It's not necessary to use a nonstick pan. It's just what I happen to have.
Now, I think these are kind of tricky when you're frying them up. How do you know how hot to get the oil? Because I usually burn my fritters.
Well, my wife yells at me all the time because I cook everything on high. For me, there's only one setting.
Okay.
But you know, you can do it on a medium heat. You can do it on a low heat. It'll just take longer for it to get brown. The way we're going to do it now, it's going to be probably 1.5 to 2 minutes on each side.
Okay. And the squash, because it's grated, gets nice and tender.
It does.
As you're cooking.
And it'll
Okay.
be crispy on the outside. So the way we're going to do this, we're going to take, like a lemon-sized scoop of the sweet potato. And we're just going to put it in a pan.
Ooh, that
Maybe
looks
that's
good.
a big lemon, but
And you don't flatten it out? You just
not
keep
yet.
It? Okay.
I'm listening to the pan, waiting for it to sizzle, make sure it's hot enough. You can hear it starting to now.
Yep.
And kind of like you would do for a smash burger, this is when I would then start to press down because it helps with the browning of the butternut squash. Let me switch to my
No, I
spatula.
noticed you used vegetable oil and not olive. Is that so you can cook it at a higher heat?
Correct, yeah. The vegetable oil can take the heat a lot better than olive oil. It won't burn as readily.
It's probably my issue because I usually use oil or olive oil.
Yeah, you really want to use a neutral, it could be corn oil, but any vegetable oil.
Okay. I like that spatula too.
Thanks. It's a fish spatula actually, but it works well for this application.
Nice, those look great. So, if you're cooking with us at home, this is actually going to take a few minutes. So go ahead, and if you need to stop the video and just do your thing and cook your fritters, feel free to do that, and we'll be right back. Kitchen Inspired is made possible by EVP Marketing and Media and Inspire Cafe. Oh, I wish you could smell this. This smells amazing.
Thank you. These are the last of the fritters we're going to be cooking right now, so we're going to move on to the next item, which is going to be the wilted spinach salad.
Ooh, okay. I've been waiting for this. I love the simplicity of the ingredients, and you don't add a lot to your dishes, which I think is so nice. It brings out the natural flavors of the squash with just the sage, and so I'm excited to see what's going to happen with this.
Yes, it should
salad.
be pretty good. Let's start by cutting. We're going to need a half a pear. You could use a whole pear if you want. It just depends on the size of the salad you're trying to make. But I'm just going to quickly cut the seeds out of the center of this one.
What's the best type of pear to use?
Well, for this application, the varietal isn't as important as making sure it's a firm pear because we are going to be caramelizing it in the pan.
Oh,
So
okay.
you want
Good
one
to
that's
know.
going to stand up.
And caramelizing it just brings out the flavor of the pear.
Right, more flavor, it adds a toastiness. We're going to be adding some pecans to it, and those are also going to very similarly add a nice toasty flavor.
Great. And do you heat up the spinach as well?
The spinach is going to go in last, and we're just going to leave it in there for a few minutes so the leaves wilt down, and then we'll be ready to plate this dish up.
Wow. So this is a really easy way to make a Sunday night dinner. This is excellent.
It is. Once you have your beets roasted and your butternut squash grated, it comes together pretty quickly. All right, we're just going to add a little bit of oil to our pan. In this instance, I am going to use olive oil and vegetable oil blended because the pan, it's going to become the dressing for the spinach itself.
Oh, okay.
So add our pears.
So it's sort of a one-pot meal.
It is, yes.
Now, if you were going to say have a drink of wine with this, have a glass of wine, what type of wine would you pair with this meal?
This one would pair most likely with a Pinot Grigio. Crisper white wine is going to be called for, I believe.
Nice. And any salt or seasonings going on the pear?
Not yet. We're going to let them get a little bit of color. It should take a couple minutes.
Ooh, these are coming along nicely.
Yep, so now you see how there's some color on the pears? At this point, we're going to add in the pecans. And they're only going to take 30 or 40 seconds to toast up.
Okay.
And then again, to add to the dressing nature of it, we're going to add in a tablespoon of coconut oil, a tablespoon or two of cider vinegar, and a tablespoon of
That's
grain
exciting.
mustard.
Whole grain mustard, you
Yep.
said? Okay. Yeah, this smells amazing. So this is pretty easy. Like if you weren't vegetarian, you could add some chicken to this maybe, or?
Yep, if you want to do that. And then we're going to add 5 cups of spinach. It looks like a lot of spinach, but in a minute it'll look like hardly any spinach at all.
Yeah, that effect is kind of amazing, right?
Yeah.
When you
It
cook
wilts
it
right
down.
down.
And again, this spinach, the butternut squash, and the beets all came from Owen's Farm through Local Foods Plymouth.
Wiggle that around a little bit, and you can see it's already starting to shrink.
Oh yeah.
And at this point here, you can turn the heat off and just let it, the heat of the pan will be enough to finish wilting the spinach.
Because you're not actually trying to cook it down, you just want to give it a little warmth,
Right, you don't want to stew it down to nothing.
Right, and you are stirring it around so all of the dressing gets on
All
of
the leaves, the mustard gets mixed around.
Yeah, that looks great. No garlic this time.
No garlic at all, that's true. All right, and now we can go ahead and plate this up. All right, so to plate this up, we have our beet puree from earlier. We're just gonna put a little bit of this on the plate,
Oh, are you going to show us some
and then we're just gonna move it over
chef
there.
tricks? Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. Perfect. You learned it here on Kitchen Inspired.
Now we're gonna take a little bit of our spinach salad, put that right there.
Oh, that looks amazing.
And we'll take one of our fritters. Maybe it's dinner, we'll do 2 of them.
Perfect.
And then that's it. The butternut squash fritters with beet puree and a wilted spinach salad.
Wow, thank you so much, Jeff. That
You're
looks fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, and we hope you have a delicious meal this evening and look forward to seeing you back here again for our next show.